Daniel Blair has lived a life on almost every side of motocross. Racer, privateer, coach, broadcaster, mentor, even musician. He's a guy who has dedicated his entire life to the sport. Long before he became one of the voices of Supercross, Daniel was just another kid obsessed with motorcycles, chasing the dream with no guarantees, grinding through injuries, trying to carve out a place in one of the most unforgiving sports on earth. But what makes Daniel's story so compelling is the way he continually reinvented himself without ever losing the passion that started it all. From racing professionally to helping shape the next generation through coaching and mentorship, to becoming a respected voice in the broadcast booth and playing in his band, Main Event. Daniel's journey is really about something much bigger than motocross. It's about following your passion and adapting when life doesn't go exactly the way you imagined. It's about finding new ways to keep the dream alive. So here's my conversation with Daniel Blair. Now let's dive in. Welcome to Ride Beyond, where we go beyond the ride and into what matters. In this podcast, you'll find meaningful conversations with people who live with passion, chase freedom, and remind us what it means to live fully. The motorcycle is our connection, but the stories are what take us beyond. Sick, dude. Yeah, this is my first time at Club MX.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. Have you gone around yet, or you been?
I drove a lap and I kind of walked around. It seems like the ultimate moto. It's like summer camp, but you live there.
So it's like an RV park meets a summer camp meets a university.
Yeah,
because
dude.
Our gym is about to be like next level beyond anything anyone's ever done before. And there's some other ideas we have as far as film study, like it's about to be like a college campus, but for athletes. So.
It's cool, man. And it's kind of just here in the middle of nowhere. And it's like all
what
these.
What are you talking about? Chesterfield, dude. It's a happening spot.
I'm driving out here. I'm like, this is crazy. And my maps took me the dirt roadway. So I'm like, dude, where are we going?
You know, what's cool though is like Max Volan lives here, and Devin Simonson is moving in tomorrow. Like he's been begging for a year, but we've been full, and he's like, I want to live there. So being out here in the middle of nowhere would seem maybe not that exciting to some. Like Cody Schock lives off the property. He's married, so he's at another stage in life. But dude, people want to come here because it is secluded and they just live here and they have dirt jumps to go and play on. There's a little pond that they all do jet skis in. So it is truly like a summer camp that never ends. And
if you're chasing this dream that requires like so much focus and effort and work, like being somewhere with no distraction, where you can just live and breathe this sport. It's really cool.
It is cool. So.
Yeah, it's a cool place to be. But dude, I'm stoked to talk to you. I've been a fan of yours since early 2000s, bro, when you were like a privateer rider.
Pre-LBZ or LBZ? Is that where it started?
I think it was probably post-LBZ.
Post-LBZ. Okay.
Still a long time. But
yeah, a lot of people will pin that date on me, and they're like, "Man, I remember you in 2004 wearing the LBZ year." Like, yeah, that year popped pretty hard. So.
Were you wearing LBZ in like Supercross?
Yeah. So they sponsored my brother and I. They came out with some in the boot pants, which is a funny story because everybody thinks that I wore the baggies, and I didn't. He made in the boot pants. And made a run at the traditional kind of gear line. And my brother and I were the debut riders for it. And made some money on it, which really, there was no making money at that point. It was bringing in money to pay for racing. And my brother and I went in a box van, loaded up, and did the entire Supercross series, just him and I. He was a minor, so I was actually signed off as like a legal guardian. And we were the boys in black, as Todd Harris would say, because I used to get, I got good starts. I was up front a lot, and he had to have a nickname for me. So it was the boys in black, dude. And that's where
I remember those days. I just don't remember the LBZ thing, but that's sick.
2004, all black gear with a little bit of red and a little bit of blue. I had some options.
It's epic, man.
It's cool.
Well, like we were talking about just before this podcast, you've lived multiple lives in this industry, from rider, racer, privateer, to musician, coach, mentor, manager, media personality. You've done like so many things. What's the common thread that connects all of it?
I would say necessity. That's where I would start. A lot of the things that I've done have been piled on top of each other. I think a lot of people know that about me. I'm usually doing 2 to 3, maybe to 4 different things at one time. And a lot of that came out of necessity, just being a provider, being married young and trying to do my job as the man of the house and provide for my wife and then my family as it grew. And also a lot of interests, obviously, all inside the sport, if you've noticed. So everything's been inside the sport, even though I have done jobs and I had some careers outside of the sport too. But between racing, even music, I would say I know it's outside of motocross, but not really. It was me and my brother. A lot of the music was driven by our love of racing. We pursued it like we were athletes, like we really cared. So a lot of our music ends up being in, motocross movies and video games for the sport. So there's a connection there, but everything really is revolved around my love of Supercross, which I've had since I was a little kid. And
Supercross specifically.
Specifically, yeah. I mean, I guess you would say my first real memory. Like I remember being a kid, but it's mostly because of what I was told of things that happened. Like, oh, this happened when you were 5. And it's like, yeah, okay, I remember that kind of, but I think it's more based off what I was told happened. And those memories have never really faded off. But the one actual vivid memory that I have where I remember being there was Anaheim Supercross 1990. I was 7 years old and I raced what is now the KTM Junior, but it was just an exhibition 50 race. And I raced that night in Anaheim Stadium, 7 years old. I won the race. I did an interview with the announcer. The crowd cheered and screamed because I had a silly answer to a silly question. And I feel like that is the first real, oh, I remember that. I can actually feel that moment. And I mean, imagine being a 7-year-old kid and your first real memory is being on the floor of a stadium where a crowd is cheering for you.
That's insane.
I think that starts everything because from there is this lifelong passion towards the sport in every way. I've been in every single inch of it pretty much. And it all kind of revolves around that moment and that memory because it was the first one and it was so impactful. And it was, I won the race, which is cool, but I don't remember that as much. I remember Damon Bradshaw and Jeff Matasevich battling that night. And then I remember watching it on VHS. They were rookies and it was like this cool storyline where it was the best of the West and the beast of the East now on the big bike class. And they're racing against the vets like Stanton and Wardy and Rick Johnson. And to me, I just got caught up in how cool the storylines of Supercross are. And then to watch them battle that night and then also have this
the fact that you were a little bit part of that night.
I had an affectionate connection to it because I raced that night. So it's had this weird connection my entire life. And then that leads into just a life of being a racer and then a broadcaster, a coach, a team manager. All these different things all stem from a real passion for the sport that I think it all started right there.
It's crazy how you have these transformative moments in your life. This thing happens that kind of just molds who you are and sends you on this new trajectory. I had a less of an epic introduction to motocross and Supercross, but it was late 90s, flipping through the cable channels, came across Supercross and watched Jeremy McGrath win a race. And it was just the coolest thing ever. And it just captured my attention. And ever since then I wanted a dirt bike and I got one for my next birthday. And then it sent me down this life and it's just it's cool. It's really cool.
Wonder how many people have had it that way. Because when I hear you say that, I think of Adam Cincerulo, who fell in love with the sport from watching it on TV and was like, I want to do that. And then got into it and became a pro motocross champion. And that's a wild history because a lot of the riders in the sport, their dad did it.
Yeah,
my dad
their
did
dad.
It. So that's where it started for me. He had the same experience that you had where he flipping through the channels and it came on. And he was like, I'd like to do that. And then to get into it, what a wild way into a sport. But I think that's proof of how cool this sport really is because it grabs you from so many different angles. And I have to imagine people are in the same boat right now. Just the characters we have in the sport with Chet Lawrence and Hayden Dean, they're bringing people in a different way right now than the television route. There's a lot of people that are grabbing hold of this thing, go, wow, that's a cool sport. I wonder what that's all about. And the hope is that the payoff is 5, 10, 20 years down the line when more people get into it, their kids get into it, more people race. The next thing you know, the sport grows, all based around that same first moment, So it's cool to hear you say that. And then to know that a rider like Adam found it that way too. It's rad.
And it's cool that these athletes, they're not just like superstars on TV. They're actually affecting lives in a really positive way, which is kind of cool. You don't always think of it that way, but they're influencing people to find this new passion
Mhm.
that can guide them for the rest of their life. It's super cool. And I mean, makes sense why these companies would invest so much money
Yeah.
to be part of these athletes, like, because these kids look up to them so much.
And it's accessible. I would say, I'm on the side of wanting our sport to grow and get bigger and reach more people. But at the same time, the size that it is makes it accessible for people because the athletes aren't too far away from the fan. And I think pro motocross is the best example of that. Just being on the fence lines, getting to see these guys now that they have the podiums down and everyone's surrounding the podium at the end. Like, I love football, basketball. I think these sports are all great. They're obviously massive for a reason. I think they're more understandable. Where our sport is more accessible in the fact that it's right there and you can go and buy a dirt bike and you can do it and do the same thing that they do. And that's what's cool. Is Saturday's pro racing. How many people drive the track on Sunday with those feelings from Saturday night and then they get to go and do it? Like, that participation part of the sport is really what makes this fan base so unique and passionate, is because they can do it too. And not in a way like football and basketball. You can do that too. You can go shoot hoops. You can play catch. This is a wild and thrilling and dangerous sport, and you can go and get a little 50 and your kid can go and do it. And there's something about that makes the sport so different. And again, accessible would be the word that I feel like I'm landing on right here, because it is. It's right there at your fingertips. You can go and do it. So.
But it's still to the point where, like, if you're a little kid at a Supercross race and you see James Stewart like walk past you in the pits, it's larger than life. But the cool thing is, then on Monday or, the next weekend, on Sunday after the race, you can go put your helmet on and pretend to be James Stewart. And like, that's really cool. Who were some of your biggest influences growing up in this industry?
I had three. One was really, again, the word accessible, was really close to me, was Buddy Antonez. So when I first started racing, I was just a little guy in NorCal. And we would drive down to Southern California, and I raced a lot. There wasn't a lot of little kids racing yet at this time, but Buddy Antonez was like the prime mini bike sensation, factory Suzuki rider, lived in Southern California. And my parents and his parents hit it off somehow when I was like 5 or 6. And I ended up becoming very close with their family and with him, so much so that I ended up being his ring bearer in his wedding. So I was really close to Buddy. And then he goes on to be, a Supercross star, turned multi-time arena cross legend, turned into a coach. And now I'd say is a friend, which is like, it's just rad if you look at the big cycle of life. But yeah, he was like a teenage kid who was just like unbelievable to me when I was just a little guy. So he would be the first one. The next was Bradshaw. I really, really like Damon Bradshaw because of that 1990 race, and his initials were DB like mine. I thought he was just a rad rider. He always looked cool, his gear, and he was aggressive, and he had a style. And I remember getting like my helmets painted for Christmas one year, and it was just Bradshaw replica. So I loved Bradshaw. And then the last one for me was Ricky Carmichael. And it's because my very first race in Las Vegas, I'm 5 years old. I get last place at the World Minis, and he was 8 years old and he won. And so that was my first taste of racing in general. And then for him to go on and always be a few years older than me and watch his amateur career and then have him go into the pros and be so dynamic, then take down Jeremy, which I was old enough at those years to really understand like how pivotal that was for the sport. And then for him to go on to be who he was, like that was a weird one for me because he won the very first race I was ever in. So those three would be three that I really could say had impact on me in my early years, and then kind of was able to carry on through into my adult life for so many reasons. And but yeah, Budman, Beast from the East, and RC, those would be the three I think that really stand out.
That's so cool, dude. So growing up racing as a young kid, getting into this sport and slowly progressing and like taking it more and more seriously as you go, what did like the young Daniel Blair envision his future looking like?
I want to be one of them. I mean, wanted to. I think envisioning it was probably a little bit of a problem for me. I had confidence issues growing up. It's weird because I'm on the shorter side. People that know me and know me in person, they'll find out that I'm 5'6" if I'm rounding up, but in the 5'5s, and I've always been little, but I've never really had like a little person complex as far as just living amongst the people. But on a dirt bike, I kind of did. I was always a little bit on the intimidated side because I was smaller and
I
just
feel like
felt
some of the best riders ever have been smaller.
maybe their chip was bigger than mine. I don't know. But for me, I always had a little bit of a fear issue and a size issue. And if I look back in my racing career, whenever I would fit a motorcycle really well, like, the end of 65s or the end of 85s, whenever I'd get to that size point where I really fit a bike and it was a little bit more equal based, I felt more confident. Where on big bikes, I always struggled with that a little bit because of just, I think, some natural fears that I had. Like I was really, really brave when it came to me individually on the bike, but get me in the first corner, get me in those situations. And I struggled with that a lot.
The things you can't control.
Yeah, totally. The things I couldn't control. And I always felt smaller. Again, not in life, but on the bike, I definitely did for sure. So I had a confidence issue all the way through my racing career. And there would be periods where I would really grab hold of some confidence and I could be really good for a little bit. So I say that I wanted to be like those guys, but I always had this limit that I lived underneath where I just never really believed that I could. And that's why I was always able to get to decent places in my career. Looking back, I wish I would have thought about things a little bit different. I think I could have gone a little further, but I never really made it to the place that I wanted to. And I would say that it was a clear confidence issue all the way through. And just, again, feeling a little bit like, I don't know, the smaller, lesser guy out there. And it made me avoid contact. It made me not really want to take chances when it came to battling and in first corners. Like I could hole shot if I had it clearly over the gate, but if I was in the middle, I didn't take big chances and, always battled that.
I mean, that's something that I actually wanted to ask you later on in the interview as we talked more about coaching and stuff, but we'll get into it now. Like, how important is mindset in this sport compared to just talent and raw speed? Because that's, I think, often overlooked. I think there's a lot of emphasis on training and work and speed and talent, but like mindset is, like, you just touched on it, like how big of a factor it plays on your success.
Man, it's a big part, but it's a little bit more complicated than that because the mental side feeds off the physical side. The physical side feeds off the mental side. They feed off of each other. But then there's also layers of each side. Like you have to be really good in this sport now. The competition is so gnarly. So you have to be really good on the motorcycle and you have to be always pushing your skill set and your speed, and those two work together. You can't get too fast without skill. If you spend too much time on your skill and not enough speed, you don't get fast enough. So there's these layers to the physical side. But then at the end of the day, the mind has to make the decision on what it's going to be and who it's going to be. And it was always a challenge for me. And that's one of the things I work on with the kids here is getting themselves to understand and believe and almost be a little on the delusional side. Because in this sport, there's like 100 reasons why you can't do it. But if you just convince yourself of one and really live off of that one, you can convince yourself to do some crazy things. So we've been talking about that around here a lot lately. Like you got to be a delusional believer. You've got to believe that when the gate goes down, you're going to hole shot and you're going to win this race. And then if it doesn't happen, you can dissect after and process the reasons and work on those things. But you can't have any doubt, period. Because if you do, you just get swallowed up. The competition's too good nowadays. And so it plays a massive role, but it's a hard thing to teach because you got to convince people to believe in themselves, and people have a hard time with that. When they ride alone, you can get them to do it. You take a kid by himself and you work on him by himself, you can get him believing. And as soon as everyone's around, all of a sudden, every reason to doubt starts just coming at you, flying at you, and you have to be able to deflect that stuff. And it's challenging too because you're dealing with different ages. For me, I work really good with like those mid to late teenagers. I feel like I relate to them really well. I remember that period of my life very well, so I feel like I can coach that age really well. And a lot of it has to do with what you said. It's the mental side, and it's blocking out all the reasons why this could go wrong, could go bad, why you might fail, and then just telling yourself and stubbornly saying, no, I'm just going to do it. And then accepting that if it doesn't happen, you just go back to work. And it's a process of also taking the emotion out a little bit, which is really hard to do, and emotional stakes are always so high. So it's the gnarliest sport in the world. If you think about how dangerous it is, how gnarly and talented you have to be, and then the skills required, and then you bring the brain into it, and the self-doubt and the pressure from mom and dad, and then sponsors, and then your peer, there really is nothing like it, which I also think is why it sometimes gets limited to a big audience too, because it's not relatable all the way. It's so in its own weird world. And again, accessible for sure, but relatable, like not really. It's a pretty wild sport if you really break it down. I mean, you could be just an average rider and you are so many levels above just the average person who could ride a bicycle, and then bring in the pressure and all that stuff. Like, dude,
I think it's only relatable to other riders.
It is. And they get it because you feel it too. But man, like the general public, I don't think they really understand what the rider's mind has to go through and how gnarly it is.
I think the best example for that mindset is the two dudes that we're watching so close right now coming into outdoors. You think about Jet and you think about Hayden Deegan, you're never going to hear either one of those guys doubt themselves in any way. There's like 100% confidence in their ability. And I think that's what you have to have. Like you said, even if it's delusional, like you have to have that. You have to be like indestructible mentally and be like, I'm the best dude. Like what? And almost be shocked at the idea that there would be anyone else in the conversation, even though they square off and then have to deal with the losses when they come. But that this chapter is going to be interesting because you are talking about two of the most mentally strong and dynamic and confident people that I've ever seen that really look at the other one like they're nothing. And it's so rad. It's going to be a lot of fun because and it's interesting too, because I think they know how to take a loss and not get psyched out. And like the next week come back without being phased. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They weirdly take the L's pretty well. They just come back better and stronger, but it's going to be a very interesting dynamic because it's going to be a noisier rivalry than we've seen, and we'll see how that plays out because it's just we haven't seen anyone this at angst with the other, especially in this era of social media and just where we're at with online and everything. It's going to be a very fun period for the fan.
It's so fun, dude. Yeah, and it's cool too because I love both of them as a fan. So it's like no matter what happens, I'm gonna be stoked. Do you have like any predictions? Like it's probably,
I mean,
it's hard because Jet's been injured also, but I mean, he's so hard to bet against, but also like,
I don't have any real firm predictions and I think it's because I'm where you just said you are. Like, I like them both. Not personally. I don't actually have a personal relationship with either one of them. So I have nothing riding on who's going to win this. But I am an entertainer. I have a podcast and I'm on YouTube and I'm a broadcaster still. So like for me, I look at it in like through the lens of this is about to be really cool from a storytelling standpoint. And I just want them to battle. I want it to go back and forth every other week. That'd be the greatest for all of us. But if I was to throw in a prediction, I would say let's not just rest on the idea that it's going to be just them two. Because
I was just going to say, like, there's a good chance that neither one of them win on Paula.
Yeah, no,
like
I do have a little bit of a relationship with Hunter, and I am a Hunter guy. I like the way he goes about it. I like the way he's built his career. I like the way that he was in the dumps. He was ready to quit because of injuries and how he's dug out of this. And so I just respect him so much. And it's not just that I like him, but he's also like maybe better than both of them right now. I mean, he's always been this close to Jet, and Jet's coming off a weird injury a little bit. Hunter's only getting better. I think back to Motocross of Nations last year, and it's like, why are we one-on-oneing this thing when Hunter might beat them both? And in fact, I mean, he is my prediction to win this outdoor championship. That's just one title. But at the same time, I'm looking over the next 3, 5, 7 years of having a really, really fun time with these characters when it comes to doing my job, which is to entertain and put up YouTube videos and podcasts. I mean, they're a gift, non-gift.
We're in a great spot, just as fans
and
media personalities. It's great.
It's the best.
Before Aero was a helmet brand, it was a belief. In 1986, a craftsman named Antonio Locatelli started building helmets out of a small factory in Bergamo, Italy. For over a decade, he honed his craft in silence, learning everything there was to know about helmet safety and technology. Then in 1997, he created the brand Aero, and he built it around one idea, that every rider deserves a champion's helmet. Not a watered-down consumer version of it, the exact same helmet worn by champions on race day, with over 160 world titles, is the same one you can buy today. One helmet, one standard. That's not just a marketing line, it's a philosophy. Safety before anything else. Whether you ride on the dirt or the street, you can find your next helmet at aerousa.com. going back to your story as a young racer coming up, dreaming of becoming a professional, what did, the experience of becoming pro feel like compared to what maybe you imagined as a kid?
Reality check. I was a good amateur, always good, and then had little periods where I was great as an amateur. And when you are in the amateur world, you do live in a little bit of a bubble, and you start succeeding. For me, my bumps and bruises would be like fourths and fifths. So that would be a bad amateur national for me. So I lived in that top tier.
It's pretty good, dude.
It was good. And I had, that's why I had a belief that there was a shot. And that's why my ambition led me to wanting to be one of those guys. But at the same time, I was well aware of my own faults all the way through, and I never really could conquer them. But turning pro, everything changes because you're not racing against the kids your age anymore on tracks you've been to a lot, in environments you're comfortable with that you've been doing since you were on a 50. Like, essentially, you really are like thrown to the wolves. And for me, it was just so much bigger and grander and tougher and scarier than I really imagined. And I like every other kid that was good in amateurs, I thought going in, like, I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to be good. And I wasn't good at first. I was extremely intimidated, and early too. I was definitely way early. I shouldn't have gone in that early, but it was just the gnarliest reality check ever. And it took me a couple of years before I even had the confidence to even be myself. I think I rode the first 2 or 3 years probably at like 80% because I was just dealing with confidence issues and a little bit of shell shock. But get me in about my third, fourth year, all of a sudden I start settling in, and that's when I started whole shot and leading heat races. Doing some really cool things. I ended up making both main events in the same night back in the day when they allowed that. So I have some cool moments where I can look back and go, I did exceed, some expectations, and maybe excelled in areas that I could look back and be proud about now. But it was a bumpy first couple of years to get there because it was so much gnarlier than I expected. And I think a lot of kids now feel the same. They race Hayden Deegan growing up, and then he gets in there and does well. So they think, well, I'm going to get in there and do well. And then they find out that it's a lot harder than they thought. And then some fade right out, and then some just dig their heels in. And then maybe a year or two later, it finally comes around, and then they start blossoming. So I think the amateur kids out there need to realize that you're in a unique little bubble in your amateur world. When you turn pro, it gets real fast. And you got guys like RJ Hampshire and Jordan Smith in the class. These are men with families.
There's
and it's
levels
just different.
to it, man.
It's a lot different.
Yeah, there's many levels to it. You start off like your local series, and you work your way up through that, and then you start maybe winning locally, and you think you're fast. And then you go to an amateur national, and you realize quickly, like, oh, this is a whole new level.
There's kids who I've never heard of from the other side of the country that are real.
Yeah, and then you start doing well at that, and you're like, I'm the real deal.
Yeah.
You go to the pros, and it's just like, oh my God.
Everyone's a real deal.
Yeah, and you can get to that top 10, and like, that top 3 is another level.
Yeah.
So it's
funny you say that, because I explained this to somebody the other day, and it like a kind of a metaphor with golf. Like, I was never a good golfer. I never really played at all, but I did have one summer where I really went at it real hard, and I was able to get into the 90s, 95 to 98. And for me, that was tough, but I look back and go, that wasn't that tough. I just put my head down and got there. But to get to 89, dude, I eventually just stopped because I didn't think I could get there. It was too big of a jump. And then I think about the guys that get to an 89, and then they want to get to a 79. And then those that are shooting under par in the high 60s. Each step gets so much
exponentially,
so much harder. And it's the same in Supercross. Like, making a main is like, you could do it. And when you do, it feels good. But that top 10, to put that whole thing together to get a 10th is really gnarly. And then once you have that, you immediately are like, okay, 5th. But now you got to get a second top 10 first, and then maybe get 3 or 4 of them. And then maybe you get a 5th, and that's so much harder. And then to get on the podium is like unbelievable. And then to win a race is insanity. And then there's guys that literally go home and they get second, and they're like on the plane. They can't even function on the plane because they got a second. I mean, just think of the layers you have to get to where you're at a place in your career where it's championship or bust. That is so many levels further along. And when you're a young kid, rookie, who's won a lot as a kid growing up, you just think you're just going to win. And you have to go through so many steps before you become an actual winner in the pros.
The sport is so brutal because you have, in Supercross, you have one winner and 21 losers.
Yeah.
So like,
but some of the losers had
happy.
the best night of their life.
Yeah.
They broke a record.
Yeah.
And then the guy who got second usually is pissed.
Yeah,
That's
interesting.
crazy, unless it's his first second.
It's a blessing and a curse, because that's what you dream of, being in that position. But then when you get to the position where like you're bummed that you didn't win by far enough, like,
yeah,
dude, you can't win. Like, you're making good money and like you achieved your dream. But like, when I think about someone like, I don't know, Ricky Carmichael or James Stewart, and like just getting a second place is a disappointment, that's a tough spot to be in, man.
A lot of pressure to live there. And that's why a lot of those guys were leaving the sport early. Dunge, RV, RC, some of these guys, there was so much winning and so much pressure all the time that it was torturous to get a second. Where I do feel like a lot of the riders now have gone a lot longer because there's been a lot of cycling of who's going to be at the top. I mean, think about it. You haven't had a repeat champion in 450 Supercross in 10 years now. Nobody's gone on enough of a run to where they felt the pressure long enough to be like, dude, I can't take this anymore. They're always back having to dig back to the top. So this cycle of Webb and Tomac and Anderson and then Sexton and Jet Lawrence, like this whole like rotation of riders has really made this generation stick around longer, because I don't think they ever felt that unlimited pressure of being the guy all the time. And so I do think that plays a role in why we've seen guys now go later in their career, because they're just not being pressured that same way. Like Villopoto was like, I don't care if there's $10 more million. Like, get me out of here. I'm done with this thing, because he was under so much pressure from winning all the time.
And the more you win, the further deeper you get into that. But
totally.
So there's that kind of pressure at the top, but I think there's like a different pressure for the privateers out there just trying to survive. So what's the day-to-day life, like the unseen, behind the scenes life, like for a privateer motocross rider like yourself?
I can tell you what it was for me. Again, I got married early, and don't regret it at all. I've been with my wife now 22 years. We are together 25, married for 22. I am so grateful for her, but getting married so early put me in a place right away where like I had to provide, because I was married. So as a privateer, you go to a race and you make some money, say it's $2,000 or $4,000, whatever. You're looking at that like, okay, I have bills and I have a responsibility, but I also need to invest into myself, and trying to balance the little bit of money you're working with and reinvesting into yourself to where you can take that next leap and do a little bit better and make a little bit more money, versus I got to be smart and make some good decisions and just cover things that need to be covered for being married and then eventually having kids. I mean, that was tough for me. And it led to my very best season of Supercross was 2009. I was a privateer to start. I ended up getting a ride with Geico Honda as a fill-in rider at the second half of the season. And that year going into it, I had a full-time job and was pursuing Supercross, because I knew that if I had a job, it was covering bills and allowing me to invest in ways that I never did before. I would run bald practice tires all the time. And it was like, yeah, I don't have the money to go buy a brand new tire, and it's not a big deal. Well, it was a big deal. I needed to practice on better stuff. I needed to be sprinting more during the week and have good equipment. So like at that stage, I finally made the decision where I'm going to do both. And I got a job at a gym. So it wasn't like a job that was counter to racing. I actually was working out at the gym. I had a trainer at the gym, but I was working at the gym. Like, it didn't interfere with what I was doing. It actually helped with what I was doing, but it allowed me to bring in some stability to my marriage while also investing in myself and letting my earnings as a racer reinvest into my program enough to where I finally prepared the right way. And then I go on the road, I quit the job. I'm like, all right, it's time to go all in. I'm ready. And I go all in, and I had the best season of my career. And it's crazy because as good as it went, I remember leaving the Vegas Supercross at the very end last night, and it didn't go the way I wanted. I got my opportunity as a factory rider. I didn't take the leap that I was hoping for. And I remember leaving the pits that night going, that's it. The career is over. The chase is over. Am I done racing? No, I love racing, and I'm still going to go and make some money doing this. But I'm no longer chasing the dream, because I had my opportunity and I didn't push it over the hill to do good enough to earn a living in the sport. And it was going to be back to scrape and buy. And it was a sad feeling a little bit, but it was also a little bit relieving in a way, because at least I knew, because I'd always wondered, like, man, if I ever got my shot, what would happen? Would I be able to do well enough to actually take the leap and be a factory guy and chase podiums and wins? And I didn't. So as much as it felt like a fail, it was also a little it was relieving to know that at least I'll never wonder. And then from there, life took a massive pivot. My wife was pregnant, my son's on his way, and a lot of things steered in a lot of crazy directions once I realized that the dream was actually kind of dead at that point.
It all sounds like it kind of was timed perfectly, though, in a way. Like maybe the dream didn't pan out the way you envisioned it, but I mean, even the fact that you went outside of racing to like get a job, I feel like maybe just the alleviating some of that pressure of just survival, probably made you ride better.
I rode way better.
Yeah,
and I invested smart in my equipment, and I did everything as right as could be for a 6-year-old privateer who wanted to give it one last shot. I really did everything right. And the actual ride on Geico didn't turn out to be all the way the best experience because there was things about it. I mean, when you're a fill-in rider, those don't really happen that much anymore. And they're really difficult because there's not a lot of time to prepare correctly and get the motorcycle right. So essentially you're riding someone else's bike and hoping to do good on a factory bike that's not yours. And so it ended up being an eye-opening experience too, where it was like, man, I always thought if I just got on a factory bike, watch out. But really, it's not about the factory bike. It's the factory ride. You need the off-season. You need the layers of testing. You need to go through the entire experience so that you go into this season actually ready. Where for me, I actually kind of went backwards in some ways. Like the bike was better in ways that got me up front a bunch. And I ended up finishing 9th in points. So it was good overall. But I also went backwards in a lot of ways because it wasn't my bike. And it was difficult to ride, and it was a frustrating experience. So eye-opening in many ways, but you mentioned the timing, and I can look back now in hindsight, and I've been very blessed. I feel like God's had his hand on my path a lot because a lot of things that ended really led to the next chapter of my life really smoothly. It's almost like a baton was being passed on, and that was one for sure. Like that dream being over right at the time when my wife's about to have my son and me to turn into a dad. Like it was a really, really it was a great exchange. And again, I look back and it's like, man, God really knew that needed to be done now because this next chapter was going to require something different out of me. And it did. And looking back in hindsight, that's happened like, I can't even count how many times in my life where one ending led to a new beginning. And it was so perfectly timed that I never saw it at the time. I can see it now and be like, whoa, that was there was some divine intervention on that one for sure.
And a lot of times those endings seem like it's not what you want in the moment.
Never.
But it ends up being for the best.
Every time.
It's so cool.
Every time. I mean,
yeah.
Sometimes it has to be a little dramatic. I mean, when I broke my femur the second time, it was a dramatic ending to me riding and racing motorcycles at all. And that's a terrible way to end. But it was also right when my TV career started. And it was like, I needed to be done with the bike. Give that thing up because something is sitting right in front of you that you didn't know was coming. And you need to treat this right and get off that motorcycle. And so sometimes the reroute and the pivots in life, sometimes they're smooth and sometimes they're a little rough, but you always look back and go, wow, that was wildly perfect timing.
How do you measure success in a sport like motocross and supercross when there's so very few people who really maybe achieve that dream that they had as a kid? It's a sport where like we said, there's levels to it. You can check off some of those boxes, but I think very few of these kids maybe reach the point that they really want to. So like, how do you measure success in this sport?
Well, it starts with the dream you have. Then the dream gets altered and adjusted a little bit as you go once reality sets in a little bit. So I do think that the goalpost does move a little bit as you deal with the reality of pro racing for sure. But I know kids right now that their goal was they wanted to get into Supercross, get their pro license and make a night show. And they're stoked about it. Like they've already accepted maybe a year or two before they got in there that I'm probably not going to be the next Hayden Deegan. I don't even know if I'll be the next, Justin Cooper, Cameron McAdoo, some of these guys that have these, very unique stories, these late bloomer type stories. Maybe I won't even be that guy, but if I could just get on a gate, then I'll be stoked. And then you have kids that make some mains and they're stoked. There's a kid right now at Club MX named Keegan Rowley. He was a super rad mountain bike racer and turned moto kid during COVID. He made a main this year and he is so stoked. It's like, it was so rad for him and it was very celebrated by everybody on the property. And now his goals will probably change. But at the same time, he's a smart kid, so I don't know how they'll change, where the adjustment will be made, where those goalposts will move. But I can tell you making that main was not like, well, finally I made a main, but I've been actually wanting to be a champ. Like he made that main and it was a big deal for him. And so I know kids that hit certain marks along the way and they can say, yes, I did that. Some, it's not so much. And that'd be the ones that win a lot in the amateurs. The kids that win a lot and the families that are heavily invested and all they know is winning. When they don't hit that goal and make a living being champions and winning races, I think it's pretty tough and devastating because it's they have so many years of winning. And then that goalpost is always so big. And that would be a tough one. Again, I mean, I was a sometimes winner as an amateur, and that was hard for me even. And I can only imagine what some of the kids that like win all the time that don't succeed in the pros, like that's, I don't know how they feel, but I would imagine it's probably pretty tough.
I think a lot of like longevity in the sport comes down to, I think to be successful, you have to dream big and maybe be slightly delusional, like we talked about, but also like you have to be somewhat realistic. Otherwise, you're just going to have a miserable time.
Totally.
You know? So like setting realistic goals that you can accomplish so that you can progress and build off of those. And like being realistic with yourself about like, what's the next step I can like feasibly achieve, and not setting your bar so high that you just like give up, you know?
Tough because everyone's different. And some could hear that and go, I get that. And some are like, nah,
dude, I'm going to win.
I'm going to win everything. Yeah. And then they find out that it's like a lot tougher than they thought, or an injury hits at the exact worst time ever. Or they make a bad decision, go to the wrong team. I've seen a lot of that happen over the last few years. And then you have a lot of regret and you look back and go, man, like only I would have, or if only this didn't. And those are the stories that I think are really, really tough. And I had those too. I mean, that's what really motivated me once I got into broadcasting, is I was really motivated by the fact that I felt like racing did not go the way I thought it could have in hindsight. And if I would have done things different and worked a little harder and been a little more delusional and a little bit more just all in, then maybe it would have gone farther. And then that ended up pivoting into my broadcasting career, which I did do that. So it can be a motivator too, if you realize it and you let it fuel you in the next chapter of your life. But the transition of accepting it and then moving on to the next chapter it's a brutal chapter for anybody.
You experienced the life of a privateer for a while and you got a little taste of the factory ride. Some of these kids have that, like the Adam Cincerillas of the world. You know, you have the factory treatment for basically your entire career. Mm-hmm. What do you think you maybe learn as a privateer rider that maybe you don't learn as someone who's just got that factory ride?
Man, I mean, it's a different lifestyle for sure. The one thing about being a privateer that I can look back on in life is I had some memories that maybe those guys didn't have. You know, when you're a factory kid growing up and you're a factory rider all the way through, you live a rad life, but it's a high pressure life. And you don't get to live as a regular person as much. And me as a privateer, like, I mean, I traveled the entire Supercross series in a box stand with my little brother. Dude, we have so many stories just from that year alone that, like, when we are together and we relive those stories and tell, like, there's amazing memories in that. And a lot of those memories came from struggle and having to pull things off. And then my arena cross years, which is, even if you're a factory arena cross rider, you're kind of a privateer a little bit. So, but those years traveling around the country with friends, like, I think being a privateer, it's tougher. Maybe there's a little bit of a bitterness to it because you feel like you don't have the advantage that everyone else has. But in hindsight, you can look back and say, man, I probably had some cooler memories as far as being with your buddies and having to, like, pull off things or staying at some weird hotels where you're like, I can't believe we got out of that place. Like, there's so many moments I can look back and say, I lived a really, really rad life. Was it ideal? Would I have loved to have traded some of that in for, like, the factory life and maybe had more success? Of course. But I also don't hate that life and those experiences because they made me who I am. And I have these cool memories that I can go back and be like, man, I did some rad stuff. So I think privateer life is tougher in the moment. But when you get older and you look back in hindsight and you look on it, these privateers are going to have some memories and go, man, I would have never done any of that stuff if I was a factory rider living that life the entire time.
I think the experience is a little bit more of an adventure.
Way more. That's the word. It's way more of an adventure. You're surviving and you got to get from here to there, and your bike might be there's so many, you're calling people to pull things off and you're going to dealerships hoping they got something. Like, man, I did not enjoy it much at the time, but I will say, looking back, like, pulling it off was cool. And there was a lot of fun laughs along the way and cool memories and a lot of friends. And, so yeah, I'm 43 now, so I look at life so much differently, but, I don't hate the moments that maybe back then I thought this really sucks.
Well, I mean, it still beats working a 9 to 5. You know, you're doing whatever you can to
Yeah.
avoid that. Like if
A lot are too. A lot are like, if you see them, they're on the tour still. They're like, one more year, just one more year, because they love it. It's a cool life, man.
I can pour concrete next year.
I can do that anytime.
Yeah.
This is now, and I'm going to ride this thing out. So.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, during that time as a privateer racer, you also started a band.
Yeah.
The Main Event, which was super rad. I remember listening to your music, you know, back in those days. And how did that come about?
That came out of such a weird situation. That year with my brother, 2004, we traveled the entire Supercross series. And at the end of that season, Vegas Supercross, my bike blew up on the face of a triple. I shattered my heels into a million pieces. Just absolutely terrible situation for me. In a wheelchair for about 4 months, finally could walk, got married right as I was getting out of the wheelchair, and like real life started. But I wanted to keep racing because I loved racing, and I was refusing to deal with the reality of my feet being as bad as they were. So I'm like, no, I'm racing next year no matter what, even though I couldn't even walk. So we moved down to Southern California, me and my wife, and my brother, who was always like, he's a big part of my life, and he went with us. And it was probably a bad move, but in hindsight, again, hindsight's a crazy word, man. But I was just married, young, and my brother, who was 17, came with us. And that wasn't the most ideal situation because he and my wife butted heads big time. He treated her like a sister. She's like trying to be a fresh married woman, and they got this little 17-year-old who had no respect for her whatsoever, just treated her like a sister. And so they were beefing and fighting, and then me and him, I having to correct him all the time and like, dude, stop being this, whatever. And then I make the craziest move of all time and decide to start listening to him and his guitar because my brother's a phenomenal guitar player. And he's writing all these songs and riffs, and we're watching music videos on TV. And I'm like, dang, he's pretty good. Yeah. And I was always like a closet singer. Like I could sing when I was by myself or in the shower or whatever. But then when my brother's around, he knew because we would listen to music together and I could sing.
Mm-hmm. And
he was like, we need to start a band. We need to start a band. And it's like,
what's cool.
The perfect thing for a brand new married guy to do to his wife is go start a band with the little brother who she's already sick of. To my wife, Margaret, if you're listening to this, I'm so sorry about all this. This was like really bad, and I apologize for this. But we did it. We started a band, and it was because my racing career was so screwed. I couldn't walk. I couldn't ride. I mean, I was really in a massive disability at the time. And so I decided to take the bait on his advance on me, which was, dude, you're a good singer. Let's rock and roll. Let's do this, man. I'll write the songs. You do the music. We'll get a band, and we'll start doing this. And I was just like too motivated to not do something, and racing wasn't working out at the moment. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. And then, dude, put my head down on that. And we went for probably 2.5 to 3 years, pretty all in on that. Ended up getting to play Warped Tour, went to Europe a couple times. Yeah, not the whole Warped Tour. I got to state this right so people don't think we toured it, but we got to play on Warped Tour. And
that's legit, dude. And like touring in Europe, like you were a real band.
We were a real band. It was a privateer band. We never got signed. It was the same thing as racing, just all done again. But this was different because I loved the music, and I still do. My brother and I still write sort of when we can get along enough to do it because we don't really see eye to eye on the music. We never did even. I think that's what made us kind of unique is he's really drawn by one side of rock. I'm drawn by the other. We would put up with each other enough to make music, and it kind of found a really cool sound in itself. And
who were maybe some of the influences that you guys had at that time?
Oh, man. I mean, he's way metal guy. He loves metal. Killswitch Engage, As I Lay Dying, Bolt for My Valentine. That was his like absolute pull at that time. And for me, more mainstream stuff, but also a little bit into that kind of punk emo. Like I like Story of the Year.
Oh, so good.
Love Story of the Year. I liked Yellow Card, but I also like Papa Roach and Breaking Benjamin and some of the mainstream commercial bands. So I've always liked more mainstream. He's like, he wants metal and screaming, and I
want a little bit more melodic.
Yeah, I want melodies, and it's because growing up with my dad driving around the country, I listened to 80s hair metal, man. It was always Bon Jovi and Skid Row and Def Leppard and Motley Crue. So I loved big ballady. I like good singing, and he just wanted riffs. It was just rifffest.com for my brother.
It's cool to hear that though, because you hear both of those in music.
Totally. If for anyone wanting to hear like the absolute perfect blend of me and my brother getting along at our very finest, just enough, we have a song called 6 Feet Underground, and it is
Maybe we'll play it right here, right now.
If you want, I don't know how you're going to post edit, but now I don't know.
Yeah, we'll play it. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope you guys enjoy. This is what's it called?
6 Feet Underground. And this is me and my brother meeting in the middle at our very, very best.
Oh yeah.
That's him getting to be the best version of him and putting up with me enough, and me being like, I still get my melodic, things that I like while putting up with him. And it's probably one of our better songs, one of our more popular songs. But anyways, the issue with the band was what comes with it. Because when you're racing and you're living the privateer lifestyle, you still have to compete and be you have to be a good person, man. You really do. If you want to do good and be safe. Or in music, like that lifestyle is not a good lifestyle for a young 20s, married, in love with his wife guy who's in a scenario where there's a lot of bad. I mean, there's a lot of drugs, there's alcohol, there's
You're also
girls
trying to be an
everywhere.
athlete.
Yeah, and I'm still having this pull to racing still. I still love racing a little bit more. And so what happened is as the band started getting more successful and kind of becoming maybe on the pathway of actually making it, like getting closer, like we had big producers calling us, some label interest, like it was about to get real. And the closer it got to real, the more the lifestyle identified with me as like, I can't go to that. That is not me. It doesn't fit me. I got drawn into it a little bit here and there. I did some crazy things in life. We had this trip to Prague that was like the most unbelievably monumental moment for our band because it was the identifiable moment where I knew that this was done. I needed to be done with the band. It was too wild and too crazy. And again, talk about that intervention, man. God put a guy in my life on that trip that is now my business partner for my YouTube, my podcast. He's like my best friend, but he was a wild man. We brought him in as a drummer just for this trip. And he was way more out of control than we all were. And he led us into a wild week in Europe where I came home and quit the band. Straight up. It was too much. It was too wild and too crazy. And I came home and I told my wife, I'm sorry. I'm not, this isn't right. And this is I'm gonna lose my wife by chasing this wild dream that I don't even feel comfortable with. So for me, again, I love writing. I love recording. I love singing. I didn't really like the lifestyle, like at all. It just didn't fit. And so I actually came home, started the process of quitting the band. Me and my brother had terrible beef for a while over it, had our own separation for a while, and I pivoted out of the music. And we eventually would come back together and write and record more music. But we never really went after it like that again because it just wasn't for me at all. It was the opposite of who I am as a person. And I knew what I was walking into and I knew what I would lose over it. And I just said, I'm out. And that was right before we were about to make it.
Damn, dude. That's
and
insane.
Then that guy, that crazy drummer, now he's my business partner. He's my best friend. And he's outside of my wife, he's the greatest person in my life and has been so unbelievably important in so many steps of my life since then. And it's crazy that the guy that got me out of the band has been so rad for all the next steps of my life.
It's just
crazy.
Another example of like things don't necessarily work out in the direction
Totally.
that you think, but it like opens up the door in a way you would never expect to something better. It's so cool.
Totally. Producer Joe, everybody. For all you listeners out there that know Producer Joe, he's the reason I quit the band. He's a wild boy. And now he's not. He's a dad and he's the raddest dude ever.
So when you were playing like a big show like Warped Tour, for example, was there any similarities of like being in front of a live audience like that and like racing a Supercross?
Sort of. The moment, right? Because when you perform on stage and like the intro, you go out to perform, it's like the gates going down. So it's a moment. But for me, there was no fear of getting hurt. And there wasn't as much fear of failure because you don't really lose. It wasn't a competition. Like essentially you just have to go and perform. And for me as a writer, I was always a better practicer. That to me, when that pressure was off, it was just me. I was really good. Competition, fear of failure. Again, I talked about kind of the battling. I always had a hard time with that. I didn't like the physical side of racing as much. Those things always put me in a box where being on stage, I didn't really have any of those fears. The only real focus I needed was just to sing and stay in key and learn how to learn how to perform. But that stuff for me was never an issue. That was very easy, which again would lead into broadcasting. That's always been very easy for me. And I don't know if that comes from, I took competitive speech in high school for 4 years. So I was kind of comfortable in that setting. When I was a little kid, I would be in like plays at school and I sang in plays at school. And that stuff has never, ever, ever brought me any fear or anxiety or anything. So that whole chapter, as far as the band stuff, I never felt nervous. It was like free feeling, where racing to me was like, oh, like 30-second board up. Those were tough half a minutes for me. So much going on, so much doubt and so much craziness going on in my brain, where being on stage, that there was nothing there. But the similarities are
the flow state.
You
just
get lost in it. You get lost in it, and then the show's over, and you're like, dude, I don't even remember what happened. Like you just kind of go. So that's where the similarities were for me.
I read online this story of you like working 40 hours throughout the week, and then like driving to the U.S. Open, racing, and then playing a show, all in like one stretch. Do you remember that? Is that a true story? I think Carrie Hart was playing with you guys or something.
There's a few Vegas stories that all kind of come together a little bit. There's a few stories. So which one is it again? Because
I read it on Racer X. I think maybe Pingree wrote it, but it was something about like how crazy this dude, he worked a 40-hour work week, raced the Supercross on the weekend, and then like the following night played a show in Vegas with his band. And
I'm not sure if that's the exact. I know that I raced in the Arena Cross series. I raced all weekend and then played after the after party. I know I did play the pre-party at Monster Cup one year. Our band did. So I don't know I don't know exactly which story it would be, but I definitely have done some crazy things like that where I was working, racing, and playing. And if it's the one with Carrie Hart, that was in his bar, Wasted Space. We played in there, and it was a pretty cool moment. Oh, no, that is the one. I did race that one because I remember now. I have a photo of it, and my arm's all scraped up because I crashed that night racing. So, yeah, we played the after party, I think, at the U.S. Open. Can't remember the year. And Carrie Hart ended up coming on stage with us. We covered Bro Him by Pennywise.
Oh, that's legit.
And he hopped on bass because he could play bass. So, if that's the story you're talking about, I would have to remember all the details, but I do believe I was working, I did race, and then we played the after party at Wasted Space.
I mean, the reason I brought it up is just because it got me thinking of like, you were spreading yourself so thin with all these things that you're doing. Did you ever reach moments of burnout during those years?
Yeah. I mean, it's still now. I mean, I work at club full time. I'm still doing 4 podcasts a week, a YouTube show, broadcasting World Supercross. I mean, I'm still living the same life where I'm really piling a lot on at one time. I've learned how to manage it a lot better for sure. Physically, I don't think I've ever really struggled with it. It's more, I would say more on the emotional side, because even mentally, I'm pretty good at like, I consider my brain to be like a filing cabinet. Like I can pull a file out and put a file away and be bouncing around responsibilities pretty well. Even at club here, my roles and responsibilities are very vast. And so I'm pretty good at kind of playing around with responsibilities, but I'd say emotionally, I've had hard times with it because I do give everything I have towards everything I do. And when things are struggling, like if one of the things I'm doing is struggling, it's one thing, but if say 2 or 3 of them are struggling all at the same time, like it can get a little bit overwhelming, where I've had to have days where I just need a day. I need a day to just reset and just kind of go completely lazy, just lay down for a day. And then usually by around the afternoon, it's like, all right, I'm good. So let's go. And then the next week, it's like usually crusher week. So it's challenging, but I've also lived like this for a long, long time, and I've learned how to do it. And it's not as challenging anymore as it maybe was in the past.
Well, I mean, speaking of that emotional load, you talked about the experience of going to Geico and it not maybe working out the way you had hoped, and then that maybe inspired you to walk away from racing. Was that decision to walk away from racing, how did that feel emotionally? Was that a sad moment, or was it just like the beginning of something new?
I mean, my wife threatened me, so there's that.
If you didn't, she threatened you, like,
if you ever ride or race again, I'm getting a lawyer. So that's
because like she's like, this clearly isn't working.
Well, I was in the hospital with my second broken femur. I was well past my prime. I was hanging on by a thread anyway, and I got hurt, and she had to, with 2 kids, a young one and a baby, had to go to the hospital. And she walks in and goes, "If you ride or race ever again, I'm getting a lawyer." And I said, "Okay, I'm done." And it would needed to happen. Probably that woman has put up with a lot. And that
'Cause
was
you weren't going to give up until like, you were going to die trying.
yeah, or get threatened. And I literally, like, in pain, like, laughed when she said it, because I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. And I'm done. Because I've gotten hurt so many. I have so many injuries. And she's been such a rock through every single one of them. And I had my broadcasting career had just started. I just got the job as the arena cross analyst. And so it was like,
Oh, it's perfect.
the timing was, it was perfect. It was like, you know what? I already have something starting. The plane is taking off. Just park the stupid bike and be done already. I mean, my wife was so right. I think she was mad the injury before that. This was the final straw. So it wasn't really emotional. It was already past due. And it was actually a very physically painful, but kind of a laughable moment, because I was just like, all right, babe, I'm so sorry. I am done, and I will be done. And then I was done, and that was it. And never really felt an emotional pullback ever again at that point. And put my head down and became a broadcaster, and then did other things too along the way for job as an employment, but put my passion into a way that I could stay in the sport in a different way, which would be to cover it on TV.
That's crazy that it all just happened to be the right timing.
Right then.
It's so cool.
Right then.
And you've clearly reinvented yourself multiple times. What does it take to reinvent yourself?
A little bit of help, obviously. I'm a very faithful person. My relationship with Christ is very, very strong right now. It was very, very thin going through my 20s and my 30s, and there was a relationship there, but it was very, very small. But that relationship was enough to where I had him looking out. But now, with that strength that I have, I really, really can look back in hindsight and see that he was there to help pick me up in all my lowest moments. And I've had a lot of them, whether they be physical moments or, I've had some devastating career changes too, in ways that I didn't see coming, but he always caught me. And so I think it really came down to my faith in him, and then a resilience that I've always had, which is to just to dig and go after something, and to chase the next thing with everything that I have. And, my ability to do that, I think, comes from being, a privateer who had to do it rough and had to really survive so early and young. I mean, I was 18 years old and completely on my own as far as pulling this whole thing off. So I've learned how to survive. And so that resilience helped too. And just being able to dig myself out of some lows and immediately get back on track for the next chase, and then throw everything I have at it. So I think a combination of a few different things. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, it's actually happened a few times, and I've become pretty numb to it.
I feel like it's really cool too, because with broadcasting, I feel like you were given the opportunity to make a much more meaningful impact in the sport than you were maybe as a racer.
Totally.
And it's cool too, because you'd have this natural gift with talking. And like you said, you have what'd you do in high school? You had competitive speech,
Speech and debate,
and you never had this fear of that, which a lot of people do. So it came natural to you, maybe even more natural than riding.
It didn't. No, for sure. I mean, You nailed that. It definitely was.
So then, the next challenge is live broadcasting, which is like a whole new beast in itself. What do you think was harder, live broadcasting or racing?
Racing for me, for sure. There was so many layers of fear, emotion, and just there was a lot of weird that went on with racing and doubt, and I didn't have that in TV. And but I think it's a combination of two things. And again, it's weird how this works. Like, I wanted to be a racer. That's what I wanted to be. That's what I chased. When that didn't really work and I got hurt, I wanted to be a lead singer in a band, and I put everything at that for a couple of years. So those are the two things that I chose to chase. Yet both of those things end up meeting on a microphone covering the sport that I loved, while also having this experience on a microphone performing live, broadcasting. And I never wanted to be a broadcaster. When I got the call to audition for it, my jaw dropped. Like, what? Like, I couldn't believe I even got a call for this. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, dreamed about, thought about. And it's like crazy that the two things that I wanted to do failed, but together they came together to lay me into a situation where I was really meant to be. And it's just crazy how that worked because, again, TV was never, there was never any fear. It was always very easy for me. And I had this drive from failures that allowed me to really dig in and treat that differently. Like, I didn't go, sick, I got a job, I'm on TV, sick. I got that and went like, dude, I'm going to try to be really good at this. Like, I'm going to, this is like a second chance. And with that drive mixed with the natural skill set and the life experience, dude, it just kind of was like, whoa, this is like what I was meant to do. And it was, it's crazy looking back on that now, because in that moment, I just wanted to be on TV. I thought it was so sick. Dude, I'm going to be on FS1. Dude, that's so rad. But there's so many things led to that prepared me for that chapter that I really didn't understand until now. So it was cool.
It feels like you were meant to do that. Like, even as I was watching like old Race Day Live interviews with you, with when you were the rider, just your ability to communicate and talk on camera seemed like so natural compared to like other riders. I'm sure that's why you got the call, because like people were like, he's very well spoken, very thoughtful in his answers. He has a great understanding of how to like communicate this complex sport in a simple way for people to understand. And it truly feels like you were meant to do it. And it feels like you really cared about the job. And like, man, I loved having you as a commentator.
Yeah. You want to hear how crazy this world works, man? I did a piece on the broadcast back in 2009, I believe. And a guy calls me up. His name's Glenn Seelig. And he calls me and goes, hey, we're doing this piece for the US Open. And we want to have you on to talk about being a racer and a lead singer, because it's kind of cool that you do both. And I think it would be rad if we did this story on you. And it's on YouTube right now. It's on CBS. And so this guy calls me and he's like, it's about racing and it's about being a singer. That guy, Glenn Seelig, in 2009, fast forward 5 years later, is the one who called me to have me audition for Arena Cross. That guy. And the crazy part is because I was in Arena Cross for those years before, he was there and he would ask me, hey, will you do like a track report for the broadcast? So I was in my gear doing, hey, I'm down here in the whoops, blah, blah, blah. So I was doing that just because I mainly just wanted to make sure that they liked me enough to where when I called them and wanted to get on press day early, I could get on the track a little early. That's really what it was. It was a trade-off. Like, I wanted to get on the track. I'm traveling around the country. So I would do anything that they asked me to do, knowing that if I asked to be press day 5 a.m. on a Thursday or Friday, I could get
return
on the
the
track.
favor.
Yeah. So I was only doing that really as like a get me on the track thing, but I also liked it. And I remember doing one in Baltimore and he's like, yeah, just say whatever you want. So I'm down there. Hey, I'm down here on the track. The whoops are tough this week. This is what it looks like. And I was doing that with zero clue that would lead to Glenn, the same guy, calling me in the summer of 2014 and being like, hey, we think you should try out for being a Arena Cross broadcaster, or would you be down? And this is the same guy who did a piece on me on CBS about the two things that I chased in my life that didn't work out. And that led me to that guy who ends up giving me the call to audition. I just, man, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
It is crazy. And now, that man has played a role in my life in other ways. I mean, he was my business partner at Eagle Grit when I bought my business partner out, and which is a business that I owned. He was the investor that came in and helped me buy the business. I eventually sold that business and moved to South Carolina. So this man has had a massive, massive role in my life. And looking back in where he was in these different chapters, it's just like,
it's so cool, man.
It is crazy.
It's cool to think back on all those people and those moments that like,
totally.
You know, they just happen. And like, it's crazy how it all works. I've been wearing a lot of pieces from Foreign Rider's new analog series lately, and I really love what they're doing with it. The whole idea is a return to the roots, like going back to the fundamentals, making simple products really well. Everything is small batch, handcrafted in their hometown of Toronto, and built with a focus on longevity. Not just something you wear for a season, but something that stays with you over time. And that's what really stands out to me. It's not about having more, it's about having less, but better. It's about being intentional with what you choose to wear, how you choose to live, and choosing items that not only fit and feel amazing, but actually mean something. That's what Foreign Rider is really about. If that resonates with you, you can check out the analog series at foreignrider.com and use code BYOND for 20% off site-wide. That's code BYND, all caps, 20% off at foreignrider.com. When you think about, being a commentator, what do you think makes a great race commentator?
I mean, you know how we talked earlier about racing, that the mental and the physical, right? There's two sides of it that have to really come together. They play off each other. I think it's similar with broadcasting, but a little bit in a different way. One half is the information. Like, you've got to have the information to share that is interesting enough to make the audience go, oh, and I took that very serious. Like, I have a podcast, I have a big audience on my podcast, and I actually reached out to them and said, hey, I'm putting out this document. I want to know what you all want to know on the broadcast. Like, what do you actually want to hear? And I read every one of these. It was over 150 of these things, and I read all of them, and I found the theme of what the fan base wanted to know. And so for me, having all of that information ready at all times mattered a lot, because essentially the audience is asking me to share these things with them. I have access to getting this information. Go and get it. And when it's your turn to talk, tell them this stuff. It was that simple.
The preparation.
It's a preparation.
It's like racing.
Yes.
Racing.
So that's that half. And the other half is in the performance, in the character, and in the delivery. And for that is something that I did have to work on really hard. That as far as getting the notes and preparing, that's just work. You just go and do it. You just go from pit to pit, and you dig into the stories, and you find out what they're willing to share, and then match it up with what the audience wants, and you just give it to them. You're just feeding them what they're asking for. The performance side, that's different, because when I first started, when it was my turn to talk, I just crammed as much of that info as I could in a set. It was just like blah, 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 blah. I just got it out. And there was no real performance other than maybe a little bit of a natural delivery, but it was very, very just one-dimensional. When I got a TV coach in 2019, I think it's 2019, I really paid attention to all of his lessons on how to deliver. And one of the biggest lessons that he shared with me from the very beginning was, you're going to always be you when it comes to your performance, but you can add layers of other people and kind of add that to who you are. And that's how you grow in your range, and you learn how to do highs and lows, and you learn when to be a certain way, which words to put power on, which words to lay back, when to be more smart, when to be more funny. Like, I learned how to perform through him. And it's funny because he told me in the very first meeting I met with him, pick 2 broadcasters that you like the absolute most, and I want you to study them and grab from them and just add them to who you are. And it was David Bailey and Denny Stevenson. And it was Bailey because of the info. He was a teacher. He taught. When he was an analyst, he taught.
You're going to learn something.
Yeah. And he was just so smart. The little professor. He was so unbelievable. And so I wanted to be like Bailey, where I just was able to teach. I wanted to teach people the sport. But then I wanted to be like Denny, because Denny was wild and loose, and he had character, and he was high energy. And to me, he didn't do it for very long. But when he did do it, he was fun. And I'm like, if I could be a little bit of fun and then a little bit of a teacher, and then just add that to who I am naturally, that's where it all began. And then I started studying other broadcasters and learning different things. But I think to do the job right, you have to have a performance layer on your ability to connect with the audience and perform to where they like you, they like your character. But then you got to just shove good information to the audience. Just put it on their laps. They chew on it, because these are diehard fans. They love the sport. They have access to a lot online, so they know a lot, but they don't know what's going on behind the curtain. And if you can give them behind the curtain and teach them, you put those two things together, and you have a enjoyable broadcast. So
I think some of that advice that you're giving applies to really anything in life. Like, if you're trying to master something, you look to people who maybe do it better than you, and you find the qualities that you like about them, and you mimic those until you master it and make it your own. Like, even riding, think of someone like Chad Reed down the street, he loved Jeremy McGrath. And so,
you can see it.
He would mimic that style, and you can see it, but he made it his own. But he's
always going to be him.
Yeah.
But add that layer And you're 100% right.
And if you, you could be a photographer and you're like, dude, I love this guy's work. And like, I'm going to kind of mimic that style, but I'm going to make it my own. And like, that's how you learn and master your craft. But everything comes from somewhere and someone else who did it. And all of these riders, I talked about this with Davey Coombs. I'm like, what was the best, who's the best rider to ever do it? It's like an impossible question.
Yeah.
His point is like, each generation is better than the next because the foundation laid by the people before them.
Yep.
And you build off of that. So like, even with commentating, you're like, all these people in the past who have done this before, like, what are the best qualities that I can master and improve on and be the best version of myself? And like the progression just goes on in anything. So it's cool.
Yeah. But that also comes from coaching. I mean, you can self-teach a little bit, but I do believe coaching matters. And without Tony Martinez, he was the coach that they brought in, I think, again, 2019, I believe. He was so important to me because he met me at my passion and met me in the middle. And he was a passionate teacher to me because he knew I wanted it. And so he just really, I mean, our sessions were incredible. And then he just led me down the path of growing as a broadcaster. And without him, maybe I would have gotten better for sure, because I was trying to, but I would have never got to where I am now, where I really feel like I have found my lane for sure. Like I have found where I want to be as a broadcaster. This year at World Supercross, I kind of, again, talk about weird scenario, but I finally got to showcase that at the very last round in South Africa. I was the analyst to begin with, and I moved over to play-by-play by the end. And at the last race, I was in this weird spot where I was the play-by-play. Jace McAlpine of Gypsy Tales was the analyst, and we had to pull this thing off. But it put me in a place where I kind of had to be in the middle. And because there was like really no way to prepare other than to just like let it rip, I got to actually be like the final product of who I want to be as a broadcaster, where I can be a storyteller, I can be an analyst, I can have character, but I can also know when to lay back. Like it was a lot of work that went into a moment where I finally got to say, yeah, after the show, that was cool. That's me. I think that's who I am as a broadcaster. So it's cool right now to know that I have found that moving into the next season, knowing that I'm going to be in that role where I'm able to be that person all the time. Like I'm glad I found it last year at the very end.
Yeah.
Because now I'm ready to go and be like the finished version of me for an entire season.
That's cool.
And, very, very exciting that it all laid out that way.
It's cool that you still have those broadcasting opportunities. Yeah. Because it's like, you're so good at it, dude. You can't like not do that.
I appreciate that. And it's fulfilling to me too, because racing was thrilling. Like I've talked about many times now on this podcast. There's tough things about racing for me, but there was also the thrill part that I really did like. And being in broadcasting, you get to live the thrill part without all the bad. I get the good of being a racer behind the gate. When that gate's up, I'm on it with the riders. But now I don't have all the fear and the doubt and all the stuff that carried along my entire racing career. It's only the good part left. And that's what broadcasting is to me. I get to live the good part of the race and just talk about it. Like it really is the culmination of a long, wild life that's really landed me in a place where I am truly, truly happy.
Has being a broadcaster and an analyst and like stepping on the other side of the gate changed the way you view the sport?
Oh, I respect the riders so much more. I mean, not only knowing my own life and being able to pivot back to my own feelings, but now when I look at them, like for instance, I mean, Ken Roxon versus Hunter Lawrence from Salt Lake City. I broadcasted that race in my living room to my wife and kids, whether they liked it or not. All right. I was in that because it was so incredible. Like, what a cool story between those two. It was a culmination of a rad season. And the way that whole race played out, I literally, I just respect those guys so much more now, being older and being in this place, because I know how gnarly it is. And when they perform, and then I get to be like part of that performance with them and like bring them to life, like it's I really cherish that. And since I cherish it so much, I look at them as just these heroes, man. And so I respect them and like them more now as a broadcaster than I even did as a racer when I was doing what they were doing. It was just a weird thing where, like, when you're one of them, you don't really see, you respect them, but you don't see it that way. But now on the other side, I look at them like they are true heroes.
Yeah.
And man, that finale between those two, and
yet another example of like either one that wins is like really cool. Like
you don't get that all the time.
yeah,
You don't get it where both stories are really good and you actually
yeah,
feel bad for the loser because
yeah.
you really like the loser.
Either way,
man. It
yeah.
was such a cool series. But I do
I
feel
wanted them both to win.
I
man.
did too, but I also feel like Kenny had more. There was more to it for him because he's just got this craziest story in the sport, and like,
and he's closer to the end of his career
for sure.
So.
Hunter losing bummed me out for Hunter. I was bummed for him, but if Kenny would have lost, I really think I would have been devastated because
might have been his last chance.
Yeah, and it's one of the greatest stories in all of sports, I believe, just with his injuries and Larry Brooks and Suzuki, the kickstart. It's a freaking movie. And if he would have lost that, I would have been like, man, I don't know if we get that ever again. So I feel like I wanted both to win, but I would have been more devastated if Kenny did for the story and how important it was for the sport. Where I think Hunter has got more chances, including this summer when he's going to win the outdoors. Throw that out there again.
I feel like as a voice within the sport, as your voice grows, I think like every word you say has more consequence and impact and even repercussion.
Yeah.
I think of guys like Steve Mathis, where there's a million times where he's received a lot of backlash for maybe things that he said. Have you ever received backlash for something stupid, or just not even stupid, just something that you've said on air?
Yeah, I've made up a few words like a few times, and I would, hey man, you mess up. You say goofy things sometimes. You have a bad take, whatever. But I've never really ever cared for some reason. I don't know why. And you know what the funny part is? I don't do it as much anymore, but people told me in the very beginning, oh, you're on TV now, man. You got to stay out of those comments. Don't be reading what people say, man. You're gonna hate that. And I did not agree with that in any way. I actually went to the comments, and for years, I would say most of my entire broadcasting career, I lived in the comments. And it wasn't because I was looking for validation, and I wasn't looking to deflect off of haters or what. It was because I truly wanted to hear if someone had something to say that was going to benefit me and help me get better. I was desperate for feedback, and I didn't get a lot of it from my bosses. Like I had one guy at NBC, this guy, Rich O'Connor, he would give me some notes sometimes, and I loved him. And sometimes he'd give me notes and there was nothing, hey, good show. And I'm like, no, like, give me something. Like I wanted it because I wanted to learn and get better. So I read the comments and I learned right away that like people that talk smack, like if it was something like, I hate this guy, he's whatever, I would just scroll past because I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for someone to go, I really don't like the way this guy talks. He talks way too fast. And I remember hearing that in the very beginning in some of the comments that I like Daniel, but he talks too damn fast. And I'm like, oh man, I need to pace up a little bit. So I was looking for real negativity that I could grow from, not just smack talk. And because of that pursuit of real and not letting like smack really get to me, I kind of never have been affected by that. Like, I mean, I could get smashed online and I just laugh at it. And including now, because now I do YouTube where I'm on purpose being provocative and definitely jacking with people and the fans a little bit and stirring things up on purpose. So like, I'm almost disappointed if I get nothing because it's like, I'm trying to be provocative now. So no, I've never, ever, ever had my feelings hurt or been affected in any way by negativity online. I don't know. I can't say I don't care because I do care. I only care about the productive stuff, and the unproductive stuff, I just scroll past it.
I think that's good. I mean, I think it's also good to like look for that constructive criticism and like not just anything negative, be like, well, screw them. Like actually like take it as, feedback. And that's so helpful.
It's like a rider coming off the track and how did I do? Yeah. But if it was like, well, hey, you're going into the braking bumps, you're doing this, and you could go faster if you moved over, whatever. That's constructive, right?
Yeah.
So that's like, you want that. And that's how I treated TV like I treated, like I should have treated racing, which was I was pursuing better. And if you're doing that, then you're not afraid of critique. You're actually looking for it. And so in my pursuit of that, I came across it and learned where real critique came from and learned where getting blown out online, I didn't have enough time for that because I was looking for something else. So, and now when I get it, like on my own YouTube show, man, I get ripped in my own comments all the time. And I I love it, man. I love it because it's just like, yeah. And sometimes they say something really funny, and I'm like, oh man, that guy got me pretty good. So no, zero negative feeling from that. I mean, I even provoked the Deacon fans as much as possible on my YouTube show just to get them fired up because they do bring the heat. And every once in a while, if the comments are too positive, I gotta spice it up a little bit and say something.
That's hilarious.
So.
I love that. You're using the Deegan formula right back at him.
Oh, 100%. And I get DMs every once in a while from Hayden, and I forget what he did last year. He did something, and I commented on one of his stories, and he's like, let me guess, I'm going to be on your YouTube show this week. I said, tune in, buddy, because he just invites it. He is a gift.
Yeah.
If you want to be,
smart, man.
he
knows that that's a positive thing. He's taking the Jake Paul approach, you know?
Totally. But I definitely use their approach in general and on him specifically because he gets the game. Brian gets the game, and the game's fun. Online's fun.
Yeah. You know, speaking of controversy, we're laughing and about the fun side of it right now. I know last year you were in the center of a much more like stressful, big, controversial moment that kind of forced a pivot in your broadcasting career. We don't need to like relive all the details of that because obviously that's old news. But like, what was that period like for you personally? That must have been a fairly stressful and challenging moment in your life.
The roughest. The absolute roughest. And yeah, I don't want to dig up and relive.
No.
But I will be transparent enough to tell you that was the most difficult period of my life because there was just so much built up. And this is my own fault really, but so much that I had buried and compartmentalized and hidden and trapped away in hopes that it would just go away. And it never did. And it just ate me up. And then finally, obviously I'd had enough and just was like, you know what? My only way out of this pain is just, I had to tell the truth and just get it past it. And, you know, in all honesty, I thought that might have been a moment in my career where I would lose everything, including the trust of the fans, the trust of the industry, friends. I thought that would be maybe a moment where I'm just going to pivot on out of the sport. And I had already started looking up, reliving my Eagle Grip business. I had a hand soap business that we got to be pretty successful. I sold it to move to South Carolina. I mean, at that time I was looking at maybe starting that back up again and saying, you know what, I don't even want to be in the sport anymore. I feel like I'm hurt, damaged. I'm out of here. And I thought that releasing the video that I did was going to maybe just be the absolute end of me. And I was willing to let it be and just walk away and say, I'm done in the sport.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. And that's
definitely wasn't.
It's not what happened.
Yeah.
It was the exact opposite. And it was a overwhelming response in the other direction and an absolute floor that I had hit emotionally that I've definitely bounced back from now through some challenging times. It wasn't like snap your fingers and all is good. That was challenging. And up until probably about 6 months or so ago, it was still a constant and daily challenge for me. But I have definitely been able to completely put it in the rearview mirror based on a few things that I had to do along the way. And it's crazy to think that was just a little over a year ago. And now where my life is, I would have never, ever, ever, ever guessed that I would be where I'm at right now with what was going on at that time and what I decided to do. And I'm very, very grateful with where I'm at. That's for sure.
I'm glad you're able to stay involved in the industry and even stay involved with commentating, you know, and broadcasting at some level, like with World Supercross. And there's like so many other things you can do to stay involved in the sport. And I know one thing that you're super passionate about is like coaching and mentoring riders. And there's something you've been doing a while called Supercross University.
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about the inspiration behind that?
Yeah. I mean, that was a pivot for me away from my job at KTM. I was the Orange Brigade team manager. And everyone's aware now, but they had some financial situations going on in Austria with the business that bled over into the American side and then definitely bled down into the amateur program. So essentially this big amateur program that was being built up, I guess you would say the lights got shut off on that thing. And it just really, the box got so small that I was like, I really can't be effective like I was trying to be here. But I had grown so attached to the families and the kids and their stories and the struggles that they were going through. And I wanted to continue educating in a way that wasn't just going to be trapped inside KTM, but open it up to anybody. And so I launched Supercross University. I will say with transparency again right now that that is not something I'm pursuing anymore because of what happened with Club MX. But there are still families that jumped on board in the very early stages that I still work with today. A small list of families that I'm very close with. So, but that led me to Club MX, where I really landed at the most amazing place for me. I mean, I can't even believe how this all happened, and I'm so grateful for Brandon Haas and just his ability to see me for who I was and who I am through that fog and struggle of what happened a year ago, and decide I don't care about any of that. Like, I need you here, and to take the leap on me, the leap of faith for me to be here. Like, I am so grateful for that because I've landed in the situation where I wanted to be, which is coaching, mentoring, and not just on the bike, like off the bike stuff too, dude. These teenage kids are going through a lot, and their battles with their parents. Some of their relationships are amazing, and some of them are not so amazing. And just to be here and be able to be a mentor and impactful on these kids in their life like that, I can't believe I landed here. And I'm very grateful again to Brandon and everybody at Club, because it's just like, it's a dream come true. And I fit so well on the property because I have a range, so I can do a lot of different things for them. But where I really do find my biggest passion really is working with the kids. I love these kids, man. I was a kid, and I know what it's like to be them. And I know what they're going through. It's brutal. And if I could just be that voice in their ear and just help them get through it one way or the other, like it's really, really, really meaningful for me.
I love that. With so much experience, working with amateur riders and amateur racing, what do you feel like maybe some of the biggest mistakes that families in amateur motocross make?
Well, I'd say there's one big one, and it's the transition from amateur to pro that we kind of already talked about. That is such a unique little window where so many things have to go right to work. And I think that sometimes the parents, and this isn't to call out all the parents, but some, they have a hard time growing up when the kid is growing up. And essentially, it starts on a 50, and their method works on getting that kid to the top of the 50 class, the 65 class, 85. So they have a formula. And then when that kid's a teenager, 14, 15, 16, 17, and they're starting to become like a little man, right? They want to be a man. They want to be their own man. And they start kind of having to grow up on their own a little bit and start learning how to learn themselves and not really be told what to do, but learn why to do it. Like, there's this little chapter where I feel like sometimes the parents don't grow up in the moment with the kid, and they stick to the mini bike way of thinking. And it's real. I've seen it now happen so many times where like mini bike parents don't turn into big bike parents. And sometimes it comes from two different directions. One, they need to learn how to learn from someone else, because you can't be with them all the way through. I mean, you see it, right? John Tomac, you see Dazzy Lawrence, you see Brian Deegan. So that formula does exist. But every parent, that's not fair. Most parents think that that's going to be their eventual role, but John Tomac is a unique individual. Dazzy Lawrence is unique. Brian Deegan is unique. These are very unique individuals. These aren't just dads that figured it out. These are very unique dads. And for a lot of the dads, they get to this point and they want to continue on this journey, when that is the moment when they actually need to say, I did it. I did my job. And now my kid, knowing when, and it's not all of them, but it's many of them. And I've seen it happen a few times now where it's like, this kid needs to go and learn from somebody else because he's too reliant on you, way too reliant. And then there's also this, I'd say a layer of discipline too that needs to grow up, where sometimes being hard on the kid right around 15, 16 years old is the wrong time, because this is when the kid needs to go and be hard on themselves. And they don't need to hear it and be disciplined from someone above. And so that would be something that I've seen with my own two eyes, and I've seen it not work, where I think the parents maybe need to grow up with the kid right around 15 and make some pivots and make some changes. And that's why I like being at Club. There's a lot of 15-year-olds here. Luckily for me here, a lot of good dads here. I like all the dads here. It's a little bit of a different dynamic because the kids at Club aren't just trying to make it as racers. They really are taught how to grow up here. Ben Graves, Hayden Justice, the coaches, they're very disciplined. And it's all about being on time and being responsible and being respectful. So they get to start learning life from these guys here at Club. So I feel like this is a unique place where it's kind of happens the right way, where it's not just career driven, it's life driven too. And there's a lot of kids that learn how to grow up here on this property because there's so much discipline and structure here that they actually fall into a place where, hey, maybe it won't work out as a racer, But I think these kids are going to grow up and be something great in life because of the lessons they learn here, because of the people here. So I'm lucky to say that I'm not dealing with a lot of dads that are crazy. I'm actually dealing with a lot of parents that are doing the right thing and handing their kids off to a great group of people that are teaching them how to be young men. So
You'd hope that like these parents today see maybe the consequences of parents of the past that maybe had falling out with their rider.
Oh, man.
And just because of holding on to that control for too long, and eventually like that rider becomes a professional with and an adult, and they want to make their own decisions, and there's a team manager and a coach and a mechanic,
a
and
lot
like
of layers to the relationship.
suddenly dad's not the mechanic, dad's
Yep.
not the coach, dad's not, and it might be hard for them to let go of that role, especially with all that's been invested financially and emotionally.
And the success that came from it. So it's that's, to me, if you're the dad and you're putting in all the money and you're doing all the work and those trophies are coming home with you too, you have this belief that you know what to do. But that's what I'm saying. The transition from amateur to pro is wild, and that's where things change, and it's nothing like you've experienced at all. And there's a lot of smart people waiting here to do the right thing, and not every dad is willing to see that all the way.
I think the ones that find that balance, like, Deegan and Lawrence, like they can still be involved with what their kid's doing, but they let go of the control, right? Yeah. They're there as like support, as a fan, as a dad, but like this kid's got his team and they're working.
Totally.
And you can be there and like support. I think that it's definitely something cool for these young families to keep in mind. And like this whole moto complex training facility thing. I mean, when I was coming up, there was MTF. That was really it. And there's like a couple dudes there. It was like Millsaps and like a couple, it wasn't like everyone was on their own. And now you have this concept with these training facilities, and it's like this whole new way of grooming these amazing athletes. Yep. I've been working with 805 Beer for close to a decade now, and to me, it's much more than just a beer. I feel like they represent a way of living. 805 was born on California's Central Coast, where life moves to the rhythm of surf, motorcycles, music, and the outdoors. Whether you're coming off a ride, hanging out with friends, or watching the sunset at the end of an awesome day, 805 is right there with you. What I respect most is their commitment to sustainability. This is their home, and they treat it that way. Conserving water, reducing waste, and constantly thinking about how to do things better for the future. They support the athletes, the events, and the culture that we all care about. But more than anything, they support a lifestyle that's real. That's why 805 has been a staple in my life for so long. I guess based on your experience and like seeing these kids coming up through the ranks, what is it that you think that young riders need most today?
They need balance. That's what I truly believe, because I've gone both ways on this too, where I thought, I don't like facilities. You just need to be out there racing as much as possible and experiencing real racing, and facilities just make you one-dimensional. And then I went on to the other side where I was like, man, there's not enough option out there, where you need to be at a facility where there's structure and you have good tracks and there's people to ride with and you have coaching full time. But if you do that only without the racing, then you do become a little one-dimensional. You may become amazing on this property, then you get off the property and you can't handle what you're working towards anyway, which is being a racer. So I really do think it is a balance. These facilities that exist now, and I can't speak on behalf of everyone because I haven't been to everyone. I don't know every coach. But for the most part, they're all driven for the same thing, which is to bring structure, bring quality coaching and educating and teaching these kids how to be winners, teaching them how to be losers too. That's very difficult, is to teach a kid how to lose properly and rebound back to being a winner again. So I love where the facility world is right now, because I think they've all kind of figured out the game. And I don't know many of them out there anymore that would say, hey, you don't need to be out there racing. You just need to be here. Like our guys here, we have a board in the clubhouse and it's got every race that you could get to over the next month and a half. And we're like, where are y'all racing this weekend? How'd you do last weekend? And it's all race, because we want them to come here and work and then go test it out. We'll find out if it's working. Oh, it's not? Come back. What happened? Let's work on that. So I think the balance is the most important thing. You need to be somewhere where you can have consistent coaching, training, structure, being in different environments around competitive people. And then you need to go and test it out as absolute much as possible. And if you find the right balance, I really do think that that's probably the ticket to success in the future, is making sure that you have plenty of both.
How do you think these families justify the incredible cost and sacrifice that it can take to chase this dream? That is, there's a lot of families that have this dream of, you know, their child becoming a professional rider and hopefully becoming one of the best. But the reality is that there's only like a small percentage of these families across the country that have this dream that are really going to make it. How do you justify what goes into it versus like the statistics of how many people actually make it?
Well, the first thing is, I don't think many of the families know the statistics. I think that they see enough of it. It's so tangible, and they see people from their area that make it onto a factory team, or they know a family who made it, or they think that, hey, if I get on this bike and I do hard work, I can get there because it is very possible. But is it actually plausible? Like, not really. If you look at the statistics, only some make like a living, like really make a living. And then some live a really rad but very tough life for a while, but then have to get a job after, whether it's in the industry or not, or they make good investments, whatever. And then for a lot, they're going to spend $500,000 chasing this dream, and then they might make some mains. That's not a big return if you're talking purely from a dollar-cent investment, which is why I would recommend to every family that's chasing this thing, you want that to happen. That can be the goal. You can go for it all you want, but don't make the experience just about getting there. Like, you've got to take in the entire experience and make it fun, make it part of your family, make it an enjoyable thing. Don't make it a terrible thing. Don't put too much pressure on mom. I know there's a lot of moms out there, man, where the family's gone a lot and mom is having to do a lot of sacrifice because the dad and the boy, they're out racing all the time. And like, you got to make time for mom, dude. Don't make this whole experience bad for her, because if it don't work out and he don't make it someday, well, you just did that entire thing and chased that entire childhood and went after all that, and mom really missed out on a great opportunity to be with her kids. Or sometimes it's like dysfunction where mom and dad are both so into it and everything's reliant on that big race. And it's like, you're so early, you're on a 65. Don't let it eat your family apart. I mean, go because you want to go. And then on the way home, stop somewhere and go to the water park. Like, make it a family thing that you all love, and you push hard because you care and you want to give yourself a shot, but don't live and die by it and make members of the family be sacrificial in chasing a dream that has a very, very small percentage of working out. And so that would be my advice. Is I'm not saying to give up. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying do it right, and don't make it all about just making it. Like, make it a cool childhood and a cool memory for the family, so you can all look back, even if he doesn't make it, and say, hey, those years were good though. And if you don't do that, I promise you're going to look back and be like, was that all worth it? Probably not. And that's a terrible place to be.
Yeah. And I think whether you become the best in the world or your dream doesn't work out the way that you hoped, the most important part is that you enjoyed it. Because even if you become a Supercross champion and you didn't like it, the process, like,
yeah,
maybe you have some money in your pocket, but like that's not what's important. You know, you only live once. It's a very cliche thing, but like you need to find things that you enjoy.
Totally.
So,
I mean, there's champions in the sport that they reach the top and it cost them relationships that they would love to have back, and it wasn't probably worth it in the end.
Right. 100%. So you've been around for several eras of the sport. You know, you've seen generations come and go. What do you think has changed over the last 20 years of motocross?
I mean, there's the racing side, of course, the motorcycles. I think that's an easy answer, right? It's gotten so much more technical with the technology. But if you actually go back and watch, like, what are we in now? 2026. Go back and watch 2006, like Ricky and James and into the Chad. Go watch those battles. Like, dude, those guys were ripping back then. It's not that much different. It's really not. So if you want to talk about that part of the sport, is it really that much different? Yeah, it might be more fun to tune, but at the same time, it hasn't changed the riding and racing much. I think social media probably has been the biggest change because
It's everything off the bike.
It's off the bike. That's what's really changed the most. The access, the media in our sport. I know there's this weird media debate going on right now in the sport. I really hope that this works out for the better. Things I've heard is silly, and I sure hope it doesn't happen. But I think the media in our sport is so rad right now because we're so connected to these athletes. They're really giving us something a lot right now. Like, you're getting the true personalities of Ken Roxon and Eli Tomac and Cooper Webb, and with their YouTube shows and all like Vital and Whiskey Throttle and Johnny Hopper and these guys that are down there like really digging in and getting like, we're so connected right now to the athlete in a way that we never were before. And social media plays a big role in that. And so to me, I think that's probably one of the better improvements to the sport because it's so alive right now. And yeah, if I looked back, say over 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I mean, even, go back to the Villapoto Dungey era. Like, it wasn't like it is now. It's not explosive online, and
I think it's better from a fan's perspective.
Way better for the fans.
But I wonder, as an athlete, like, do you have more pressure now? Because it's not just about being an athlete and being fast on a motorcycle. It's about the whole package. You have to be your own personal brand off the bike. You have to have your own audience and channel, and you have to like manage this ecosystem of content and storytelling around your life. And you don't have to, but like to be attractive to sponsors and all these things. Like, I feel like you face maybe a different pressure now than you used to.
Yeah, I do think that because, again, there's so much more of a connection to the fan right now. But at the same time, I remember reading a book somewhere. I don't remember where I read this, but back in the day, like, rock stars were so unbelievably massive in scale to people because they weren't so accessible. It was like, if you saw, John Bon Jovi back in those days, it was like unbelievable because you didn't really have much connection to him there wasn't online. So it was a bigger deal to be a superstar back then as it is now because there was a big disconnect from the fans. So they were like seen on this other planet, where now, like, these riders are all flying around. These bands fly around. Like, they're all flying. You see these people in public, and it's like the wall came down to where everyone is way more connected now. They write back. I mean, I remember Ken Roxon firing back at fans on social media back in the day, and I was like, this is kind of rad. Like, he's blowing out fans, and they're fighting with it. Like, so the world has definitely changed, and it's made our superstars brighter in one way, but also not as bright because they're not so elusive anymore. They're so right there. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's definitely a different thing, and I don't hate it right now because
I kind of love it, but
I think I personally like it right now because, again, I do a podcast, I do a YouTube show, and so that tight relationship that the athlete has with the fan right now, to me, makes things really fun. So maybe I'm being selfish when I say this, but I think it's way more fun right now than it would be if these were people that you just had no connection with whatsoever, and you saw them and were like, oh my gosh, where it's not like that in the sport right now. Like,
yeah, I mean, I remember, like, James Stewart and Ricky Carmichael, their Monday through Friday was pretty elusive and secretive.
They were Saturday. They were Saturday.
Yeah. Now, like, this morning I was on Instagram. I saw a post from Gypsy Tales with like Jet just talking about his mental confidence and stuff. And then there's a comment from Hayden Deegan with like a crying, laughing emoji. And I'm just like, dude, this fun. Is so fun. Like, how can, like, it's so cool we get to see this. Like,
it is. So
back in the day, it
hasn't even started yet. Hasn't started.
Right.
It starts like very soon, or I don't know when this is coming out, but we haven't even got going yet, and it's already going, man. These two are going to be great, dude. We're in a cool space right now for sure, and it's making the sport feel, and maybe Hayden's responsible for this with Brian's influence, but it is feeling a little bit more freestyle to me. Which that era, they were a little bit more combative with each other. There was more.
There was characters.
There was
and
more
rivalries.
It was less professional, a little looser, and I feel like that's happened to our sport, and we've gotten a little less corporate, at least on the athlete side. I think we've gotten more corporate in a few ways that I think are the wrong direction, but when it comes to the athletes, it's gotten looser, and I do think that it feels more freestyle, and to me, it's more fun.
What's funny though is they're more focused than ever, but it's like the personalities are
exactly.
It's cool.
It's a perfect combination of, I think they're more focused, driven, and on it than ever right now. But then off the bike, it's way looser. And it's a very enjoyable place to be for the sport. I look forward to every Saturday, man. It's like it's good. This has been a great year for sure.
So what do you think it takes for someone to actually succeed in this sport long term? Because I feel like now, lately, we've seen a lot more longevity out of riders like Tomac and Roxon and Cooper Webb and these guys who are competing in older age and doing really well.
Mhm.
What is it like? How are riders getting this kind of longevity?
You know, it's crazy. It's such a counterproductive argument. Like this is going to go in two directions, but some of these riders having injuries, when they had their injuries, has allowed them to actually race longer because it's taken them out of doing every single race. Like look at Aaron Plessinger and Justin Cooper last year. They were the only two that made it to one point, and then I think Justin Cooper was the only one at the end. They can't make the 31. It's too many. And since it's so many races, like if you were to put 3 years of that together in a row, the tank is done. And so these guys actually getting injured so that they're skipping seasons has somehow allowed them to go longer because they're not draining the tank. Now they are getting hurt and having to come back from injuries like Eli. Eli's injuries probably has extended this thing out a little bit because he's, number one, unsatisfied.
100%.
And number two, he hasn't drained the tank all the way. Like if he did 31 straight races 2 years in a row in his 30s, dude, he ain't doing it no more. There's just no way. He's going to be so burned out from the flying, the travel, the exhaust, everything is going to just crush him. But it's weird that these little injuries to Kenny and to Coop and to Eli and even to Jet is like, it's making these guys actually, I think, go longer and deeper because they're not just running it out in one shot, which is crazy because you would think injuries would be the reason you're out of the sport. I actually think it's kept them in it because number one, they're not satisfied. These guys are still driven, and it's because they've never been able to go on a run and just put down 2 or 3 years of draining the tank and winning to where they're finally, that's enough. They just keep coming out of an injury and being like, all right, I'm going back in this thing. So it's a weird era for that.
And also, like, what other sport with this high of a physical demand and this high of risk and consequence has almost no time off, almost no off season? There's a couple weeks, but like what athletes have to compete at this level with this amount of risk with no time to recover? Well, it's like,
it's extremely unfair to the rider because you know what the riders love the most? Racing. That's why they do it. They like that feeling, that feeling that I kind of didn't like. They like it. They like being on the gate. That drives them. But in order to be good at that, you have to dig so hard during the week to be good enough to go and race competitively. So it's like the problem with our sport is that people think it's the racing. I don't believe it's the amount of racing. I believe it's the amount that has to go in to allow them to go racing. And if it was all spread out a little bit longer, I think they would be a little bit better off. But they love to race. I mean, Justin Cooper proved that last year. He did all 31 races and he was right at World Supercross. Like, it's not just for money. He's making decent enough money. He's not like, I got to go and grab another bag of cash. No, dude, they like to race, man. They love racing. But the work during the week is so gnarly because it's so competitive and the races are so challenging that is what drains the tank. And I'm telling you, this sport would be, if they raced every 3 days and they never had to train, they just literally traveled and raced only, they would love it because they would just get to do the part they love. The training and the buildup for it is exhausting. And it's the counterbalance that makes this whole thing work because you got to train hard and dig deep to be good on the weekends so that you're worth getting a deal that allows you to go race in the weekends. But I really think the sustainability right now, it has to come from just strategy. These guys have to be really disciplined when it comes to their sleep and their diet and their food and their emotional management. And that's why you see a lot of these guys hanging on too. They got wives and kids. I think that's adding some balance. It's not wearing them out. It's actually giving them a little bit of balance. You would think the kids would come around. They'd be like, I got these kids now. I'm done with racing. I actually think it's helping balance them out because their lives are good away from the bike a little bit. So it's a very unique place to be in. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know all the answers to why this era has done what it's done, but there's a few outlier things that are making me think, and that are at least assisting in this era going so long and deep. And And maybe 10 years from now, we'll be able to look back and all these guys will reveal and tell why they did it. But to me, there's a few things that really stand out is that's probably leading towards these longer careers.
Totally. And like what you're talking about, the training load and how gnarly that is during the week. You see it every day here. It kind of contradicts my point. I was thinking, a longer off season would give these guys time to recover, but they're going to train through that entire off season. These top guys aren't taking a break
because their competitors are, and they feel they're getting behind. And it's just like,
there's not a break.
No, it's not a break. I do think in a perfect world, I think the sport would be a little bit better off if we had more weekend breaks in between. Like, man, if I wish it was a rule. I wish the sport just developed a rule. The new rule is you go 3 on, 1 off.
Yeah, once a month you get an off week.
And if they had that to where they just had a chance on a Friday and Saturday to go with their wife and go to the beach or go do something, and they're not going to go and like ruin everything they built, but just the pressure release to be able to go and like not have to go that week. And if they did 3-1, 3-1, 3-1 all the way through, dude, these guys would race 12 months straight. They wouldn't stop because they like to race, but it's doing so many in a row.
Even just one weekend without the travel,
dude,
like that wears on you every week.
I don't even travel, but having these off weeks between Supercross and motocross, even I feel a relief a little bit just because I do a YouTube show that follows the races, right? I watch the races. I wake up Sunday morning, I do a YouTube show, and that takes pressure because I care about it. Just having the off weekend to say I could get up and not have to do that this week alone, just 1 week feels so good. I can only imagine what these riders feel when it comes to traveling and staying in hotels and early flights and all that. It's like, dude, 1 week a month off, dude, it'd probably be the dream situation for these guys. I think they would love it.
I agree. So when you think about your legacy one day after everything you've done in the sport, what kind of an impact do you hope you leave on the sport of motocross?
And if you would have asked me that a year ago, I would have said, man, I want to be remembered as a broadcaster, racer, podcaster, coach, team manager. Like I would have probably wanted my resume to be on display and be like, this guy did all of this, but I can't sit here and be honest with you and say that that's what matters to me anymore. Because about a year ago, I fully surrendered and did give my life to Jesus Christ. And that matters so much more to me than all of that ever has. And so that would be what I'd rather be remembered for now. Someone that loved God and put him first and got to do a lot of rad things with the gifts that he gave me and the opportunities that he gave me. And what a cool life I've gotten to live. But in all reality, man, those are things that I do. They don't identify me anymore. They used to identify me. I think that's why a lot of things in my life were heavy on me emotionally. And I'm just past that, man. It's my identity is in him. And I would rather be remembered for that. And I hope that, again, I'm 43 years old. I don't know where life is going, but I would hope that my future leads me in a place where my legacy is built around more what I did for Christ and the cool things I got to do in those early years when it came to dirt bikes. That's 100% what I'd rather be known for.
That's cool, man. I feel like when you're younger and you're coming up in your career, you think that even as with these racers, you think that your happiness and fulfillment will come from achievements.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
And then you realize that it's all about the experience along the way.
Totally.
And like what you learn and the people you meet and like the value you can provide other people and like
those things you can't take with you. That's the thing I've learned is like
the things that aren't trophies.
Yeah, because that's resume. That's a lot of external stuff, and it's definitely cool while we're here on Earth. But to me, I don't really look at the external stuff anymore. It's definitely more the internal stuff. Even like you asked me about being a privateer, man. Like those memories with my brother. I can tell you right now, traveling around with my brother in 2004, wearing LBZ gear and a box fan, struggling to get from race to race, means 100 times more to me than the year I rode for Geico Honda and finished top 10 in championship points and got to pit out of a semi and ride a factory bike. Like that externally is a way cooler look. That means that's a speck compared to the memories I got with my brother. That matters way more. So like, but that's a lot again in hindsight. Like I wouldn't have thought this way a year ago because I thought more about my resume and my legacy and the things that I've gotten to do and how much that would matter when people would look at me and have a perception of me. But I've grown into a different place. And like, for me, like, being blessed means something different now than it used to be. Being fulfilled means something different than it used to be. And it's not that these things don't matter to me. I still look back then and I'm very proud of the things that I've achieved, but they definitely don't matter as much to me anymore, the highs or the lows, because I've just found myself in a completely different place in life. And my priority list in life has completely been flipped upside down, and it's made life a lot more understandable and definitely a lot more enjoyable.
Well, knowing everything you know now with all of this experience, if you could somehow go back and talk to that little kid at riding that 50 at Supercross at the very start of this journey, like, what do you think you would tell him?
I would say, buddy, you're in for a bumpy road, man. You're going to go through a really, really bumpy road, but it'll all be pretty cool along the way. And I would probably have a few more pieces of advice, but it's weird because if I gave that advice, it would steer the path differently. And I look back and I don't hate the path.
You got to learn it the hard way.
100%. I look back on my life and my path and the journey I've taken, and I have zero regret because I've learned from all of it, and it's led me to today. And today I'm so happy. So how can I sit here today fulfilled, satisfied, happy, and then look back and want to change that? Because maybe it pivots me in another direction. Maybe it puts me over here instead of over there. And I would just tell that guy, hey man, you're going to have some tough injuries along the way. You're going to do some things you never thought you would do, but it's going to be a lot of fun and it's going to be bumpy. But at the end of the day, you're going to be able to look back and say, hey man, that was pretty cool.
It was a hell of a ride.
It was a ride. That's for sure. It was a ride.
So I guess my final question, what is it about motocross that keeps people so hooked for life?
I think it's a combination of the thrill and the danger behind it, because I think we all like that, right? The dangerous, man. You go out there and do a big jump for the first time. You go down a long start straight with a bunch of guys in the first corner. There's this thrill of danger that we all really like. You combine that with the stories of the sport, the legacies of the past, the stories that are being told now, the riders, the athletes, just these incredible stories. And then I also think there's a little bit of this pride of being in a sport that not everybody understands. I think there's a uniqueness in this niche that we all like a little bit. Like I love football, but I don't have the same feeling about football. Everybody likes football. Moto's unique, man. Moto is different. It's a little bit misunderstood, and we all kind of like that a little bit, I think, too. So you combine the thrill of being able to participate and do it, the uniqueness of it, and then the incredible stories that come out of it. Dude, it's
kind of in the name of this place, man. We're all in a club, man.
Totally
together.
In a club. We all are in a big old giant club. Even you, Hayden, Jet, you're all in a club together. You got to realize that. You might not like each other, but you're all in the same club.
We're all in this together.
Yeah. So that'd be it for me.
Cool, man. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
It was great to meet you and just relive your journey in this way. So
a lot of fun. We covered a lot. A lot of chapters of life that look back, and they're all a lot of fun.
Cheers, dude. Well, I wish the best for you. Thank
you.
you. If you ride motorcycles long enough, you start to realize it's not about if something bad will happen. It's about when. And when it does, having the right people in your corner makes all the difference. That's why I've partnered with my friends at Rider Justice. They're not just a law firm, they're actually riders. They understand the risks we take every time we throw a leg over the bike, and they're here to support specifically the motorcycle community. From helping you understand insurance coverage to being by your side to help you through the process and provide you with resources if you ever happen to find yourself in an accident. But what I really respect is what they do beyond that. Educating riders to be more prepared, hosting crucial safety training, showing up to events, supporting the community, embedding themselves in the culture, and actively working to make the roads safer for all of us. You can learn more and find the resources that you might need at riderjustice.com.